Jim Shooter thinks Marvel Studios is adapting Secret Wars. Well, Secret Wars is near and dear to my heart because in a lot of ways it really was the beginning of my comic book collecting obsession. I had a handful of comics before that, and mostly my introduction to superheroes was through television. The old Batman show, and then all the cartoons, Super Friends, and the Spider-Man cartoon, on and on with all that, and Spider-Man and his amazing friends, and all that sort of stuff. But at one point, I think it was my brother came home from school or something and said, hey, they've changed Spider-Man's costume, and looks like he's turning evil or something. Because it was all, black with the big white spider on it. And I was like, oh, really? So back in those days, in the dark ages, I got comic books. Sometimes there was like a 7-Eleven. There would be some comic books there, but primarily was the K&B drugstore, and there was a spinner rack. And so I had to go and look, and there was this issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and there he was in this black outfit. And I'm like, what's this about? So I bought it with whatever coins I had. And I was reading it, and of course, the editor's notes explained that this was fantastic, because it wasn't just a change in style. This costume could turn into his normal clothes and all this stuff. It had an endless supply of webbing and all this sort of thing. And how'd this happen? Well, the editor's notes below told you this was as a result of the Secret Wars. And so, what's that? So I had to look for that, and I think I got issue 7 of it at the mall in the bookstore. So, and then later on, that was the first time I'd ever, had to seek out a comic book store in New Jersey, I believe, to order the back issues. I didn't even know you could do that until there's the ads and the pages of comic books, so I looked through it, and they had them, so that's how I got most of the issues, and then collected the rest as they came out. And that was it. I was in it, and the whole thing about it was it's a really cool story. And Jim Shooter, of course, he was the editor-in-chief at that time, and this was all a deal to sell toys, and so they were come up with an idea for Mattel. And so he had to come up with this series that would be the backbone of it. And so you got the toys and the Secret Wars toys and all that. And that's almost a separate issue, really, compared to the story, because the story was really good. So basically, you had the group of Marvel superheroes get abducted and are sent on the other side of the universe, apparently, by this godlike being called the Beyonder, who wipes out an entire galaxy right in front of them while they're in these little spaceships, I guess, that they were trapped in, and told them, slay your enemies, and you can have all you desire. There's nothing I cannot, do for you, because he's practically God. He's all powerful, and he builds a planet for them to fight on, made up of parts of other planets, including Earth. There was an Earth town stuck in there somewhere. And that's the whole premise of it. It's also probably one of the most definitive Doctor Doom stories. In fact, at the end of this, it's like, poor Doctor Doom, you would have to conclude he'd be a broken man after this, because he achieves godlike power, omnipotent power, and he loses it because he couldn't handle it. And that's the kind of thing that I think would shatter him forever. But it's you got to keep Doctor Doom around, so he got over it. And so there was a sequel that was interesting, not as good as the original, but still pretty cool. And they did all, that's when it all starts with tie-ins and all that stuff, because they do the events every summer now. But it kind of really began here. Before that, I guess you could kind of say Contest of Champions was this thing, but I don't know that it bore any relevance as much as Secret Wars did. Not all of the Marvel superheroes were involved in it, but it had this effect. Now, the biggest effect was on Spider-Man, because he gets the Venom costume out of this, and of course that led to Venom, becoming its own character and everything. But this is where it came from. And there was quite a few, and the threads of this stories followed them for a long time afterwards. It was also my first introduction to the first female Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, which MCU seems to have forgotten all about. And then, we got to backtrack and try to weave her in now. Yeah. But there was a lot of cool stuff. There was a lot of conflicts between the X-Men and the Avengers and all that sort of thing. And it was just great. And it had quite the impact, and it really did ignite that's when I caught the disease. And that was that. Yeah, there was a period where I quit comics for almost 7 years at some point. But this did get me into Spider-Man pretty heavily for a while, and got into the old Hobgoblin mystery and stuff at the time, and that'll be another video at some point. But Secret Wars was great, and the follow-up that they did later, which really has nothing to do with this series, which was for all intents and purposes the end of Marvel Comics, it was cool in and of itself, but nowhere near as cool as this. So the DC Comics response was a series called Superpowers, but that one really was for the purpose of the toys. Although the second volume they did of that one with Jack Kirby, I think Jack Kirby did write the first one, but he wrote and drew the second one, I think, if I recall. But it's his art anyway. But it works as basically a follow-up to his Hunger Dogs graphic novel, which for all intents and purposes was the end of his New God story. So there's that, you know. They got to fight Darkseid and all that stuff, and he's got a base on the moon and all that. But of the two, Secret Wars was the better. Obviously, the bigger response to this was Crisis on Infinite Earth. But Crisis on Infinite Earth, at least at the time, but that was not for a toy tie-in and all that. So what the hell? Why am I talking about it now? Well, of course, Jim Shooter was at MegaCon in Orlando. And according to CBR, a video was posted by Geekosity Mag. So, and I'm reading this at Superhero Hype, so round and round we go. But Shooter detailed a bizarre phone call he received from an executive of property management, presumably at Marvel, asking if he would be willing to write a Secret Wars novelization. Upon receiving a retroactive work-for-hire contract, Shooter turned the offer down. But he later received another call from Marvel's David Bogart, who apologized for the previous call and offered another retroactive contract for $10,000. Shooter stressed that he knew that his original Marvel stories were work for hire, but Bogart apparently told him that Marvel didn't have a single piece of paper verifying that they own the rights to characters like Beyonder, Titania, and the Julia Carper version of Spider-Woman, which her outfit is what inspired Spider-Man's black outfit. After finally signing the contract, Shooter decided to ask the million-dollar question. I said, "This means you're making a movie, right?" recalled Shooter. He said, "Well, I'm not allowed to tell you that." I said, "I think you just did." So, does this mean it'll get made? Well, we'll see how the MCU fares. I think they're about to get hit by several bombs now by what they've developed at the moment. I think both the D+ shows were not very good. They had its moments, but they were pretty bad. And then Black Widow bombed, and now you've got Shang-Chi and the Eternals. The Eternals looks dead on arrival. Shang-Chi is the only one that might be good, but their star is just, he's just not very nice, is he? And all that nonsense. So, but Secret Wars is the type of thing that they might go for, and it appears that they're more interested, and wisely so, in the Jim Shooter version rather than the later one they did. So, or maybe they'd end up doing a combination of the bunch. But how would they do it? Obviously, Steve Rogers wouldn't be in it, but I guess there would be the Sam Wilson Captain America would be in there. I'm assuming that by the time they get around to it, they will have introduced the Fantastic Four for the MCU and the X-Men. So we already know they've got a She-Hulk story going, and they already have a Hulk, so those two could be in it. And Monica Rambeau's been introduced, so certainly she could be involved. And as far as Iron Man goes, well, it'd be perfectly fine for it to be War Machine, because that's pretty much who was involved in that. Because at the time, Tony Stark was dealing with his alcoholism and was no longer Iron Man. So James Rhodes took over the role. He took on the suit and the missions and all of that, and he's the one who ended up getting swept up into the Secret Wars. And so it would be fitting. It's perfect. That works, you know. But I don't know how many other characters will still be around, or if it'll be their knockoffs, because I guess they're getting ready to write Hawkeye out of the story once his daughter takes over and that kind of thing. And depending on what deals they work out with Sony, obviously Spider-Man would be a part. But this is the interesting thing. Do they do it like the Venom story? And with multiverse and stuff, are they just going to acknowledge that the Sony Venom movies, that's another multiverse, and that this will be a different version of where this alien thing came from? Because the Venom movie establishes that it's just something that, you know, crashed out of the sky. And so this could be it. In the MCU, this is how it happens and where they would go forward with that. But then they would still have to work out a deal with Sony to have Venom, or they just abandoned it altogether. I don't know. You know, at the time Infinity War was happening and stuff, I kind of thought, oh, and Sony kind of teased this sort of stuff, like there would be some little wink and nod to the MCU with the Venom movie, and that, oh, as a result of Infinity War, something fell to Earth, and you know, they're connected some kind of way, because there's still rumors that a third Venom movie could have Tom Holland in it, and that sort of thing. Don't know how closely they would follow it, or if they would merge it with some other story. But that Secret Wars would ultimately become one of their new Infinity War type thing that they move to for the MCU, provided there's any MCU left that anyone cares about. So there's good and bad in it. It would be cool to see a big thing like that with the Beyonder and Doctor Doom taking the Beyonder on and all this stuff, and on this planet and all that, and then having it filter out through other films and TV series afterwards and all that. And then if they do Secret Wars 2 where the Beyonder comes to Earth and all that, you know, that could be interesting. But oh man, in the current era, how bad is it going to be where they mess stuff up? And so might be better just not doing it at all. But the fact that they're paying him to do a novelization of it, so that there's not a lot of details here, and I'm sure he wouldn't reveal that going forward. But would they be wanting him to, you know, reimagine it for the current era of Marvel and stuff like that? But anyway, there it is. So yeah, it's important to me because of the significance of the Secret War series, but yeah, it's probably not going to be very good, and that's the big fear. But maybe they'll have their act together by the time they get to it, because this would be years down the road, should they do it. But definitely they're thinking about it. I think, you know, who knows where they'll be in a couple of years, and might have to move to something else. But well, time will tell. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr. Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.